Welcome in. Hail to the podcast, brought to you by Maize and Blue Review. We are getting dangerously close, folks. Less than 3 weeks until Michigan football kicks off its 2024 season. It's defending national championship season, opening with Fresno State. Fall camp is off and running. We've got guys hitting in pads. We had a scrimmage on Saturday. Lots to get through. So we're going to kind of take a mid-fall camp breakdown, go through the depth chart, share some intel that we've had, some expectations, top performers, etc. Obviously, if you're live with us right now, make sure you're jumping in the comment section, asking questions, throwing in your input. And if you're not live with us, make sure you're hitting like and subscribe and getting the notification bell for when we do go live. Very excited to have the entire trilogy together. Starting with, of course, our Intel insider and publisher, Mr. Josh Henschke, who, again, beard game on point.
Hey, I'm trying my best over here.
No, I'm a fan.
Trying to survive.
I'm a big fan. And now that we told them, look, we won't talk about recruiting, we're just going to talk ball, Mr. Brock Heilig joining us from his Christmas closet, as always. Also, hair game looking good, nice and long. Got it up right now, but that's okay.
Yeah, thanks. It's good to be back.
How you been, man?
It is good to be back. It's been a good summer, very fun, lots of good times. I don't know about you guys, to think that the season is only 20 days away is mind-blowing. Like,
yeah,
I need to know if Michigan fans feel the same way, because many off seasons fans are just waiting for the next one to come. Maybe the one before it ended in a bad loss, like 2022 or something like that, but I feel like fans are content, and then the being content, all of a sudden the season comes up way quicker than anyone expected, right? And it's weird. It's a weird feeling. The off season flew by.
I think having that natty did make it a lot easier to just enjoy the off season. But yeah, there's obviously, now that we're getting close to the season, there's a lot of question marks, and it's a whole new era of not only Michigan football, but Big Ten football with 4 former Pac-12 teams joining, and college football with the 12-team expansion. So it's weird. It feels like Michigan won kind of the last one of that era, and now everything's starting from scratch. So, Josh, real quick, before you introduce us to our friend Wes, I do want to call out my buddy Brett, who is an Illinois fan. And when I tell you, I don't know anyone that knows more about players from the state of Illinois. He is very interested to know if Jair Hill is locked in for CB2. You got to stick around. We'll get to it. But glad to see you, Brett. And again, his Illinois knowledge is unbelievable, dude. It's absolutely insane. But yeah, like I said, guys, we're going to get into the whole depth chart and share all the intel we've been sharing. So, Josh, real quick, tell us about our day one friend, Mr. West.
Yes, I just want to shout out the sponsor of our show, West from My Perfect Franchise. Would you like to escape corporate America for good? Maybe you'd like to start a business on the side and keep your corporate gig. West can help. West is a franchise consultant as well as a business owner and can help you find a franchise that fits your skill set, financial requirements, how much time you have to commit, and more. A franchise is a business startup and operations kit, perfect for those with general business skills, but who may not have specific knowledge on starting and running a small business. His services are 100% free, and he's here to help if you have any questions about business ownership. You can reach him by phone at 512-970-7478 or see him on the web at myperfectfranchise.net/aboutwest. Again, that's 512-970-7478 or see him on the web at myperfectfranchise.net/aboutwest.
Thank you, sir. All right. I was just thinking about with this new background that I did. This is not going to work very well when I do shared screen, but that's okay. Let's get started with the top and where the conversation has been all off season, and that's at quarterback. Well, that actually works out. It blocks out everything. That's nice. Okay. Clarity is not the word I would use. I think a theme of the offseason has been this coaching staff really pushing Alex Orji to win the job. They wanted him to take this job. I think we could all agree at the start of fall camp, I don't know that anything was known more than when the offseason began. It really felt like this decision was going to be made in fall camp. 2 weeks in, We've heard really good things about Orji, that it seems like he's taking the next step. We've heard things that we've expected to hear, just that the offense is obviously different with him in it. He brings something dynamic to it. Players are gravitating towards him. He's got that leadership piece. We expected that. Davis Warren, who I think a lot of people don't realize was expected to be the backup quarterback last year, had a shoulder injury that really messed up his whole season, had surgery this offseason. He's looked really good, arguably the best passer at times. Jack Tuttle was the other guy in that conversation, and we'll talk about that in terms of him maybe missing a step and fall here and dealing with some recovery from his surgery as well. This really feels like it's kind of narrowed in to Orji and Warren to me, Josh, and it just continues to feel like this is Orji's job to lose.
Yeah, sure feels that way to me. No one's really definitively come out and said, at least to me, that, hey, Orji's going to be the starter. But I mean, I think at this point, you're talking about like this is really his job to lose. I've heard he's had his good days, had his bad days. I mean, you can say that about all three quarterbacks, really. But the Orji is, at least to me, I think the odds-on favorite right now. And I say right now because that literally could change.
Right.
I don't know. I can't really speak to how close the race is, and I think we've all been on the same page in terms of like the coaching staff basically begging Alex Orji to take this job and kind of run with it. So, man, it's all right there. I don't want to discredit anyone like a Tuttle or Davis Warren or anything like that. Warren's had a really good camp. He's healthy. That's the most important part. But yeah, man, right now, it really seems like all the talk and all the momentum really kind of feels like it's all on in Orji's corner right now for sure.
Yeah. We've been saying this since the spring, guys. It does seem like it's set up for Alex Orji to win the job. And just for me personally, talking with various players in different interview settings throughout some of the summer, that's what the players think too. A lot of these players, when you ask any question about the quarterbacks, Alex Orji is the first name they bring up. They say he's a leader and that he's grown a ton. And it's what it's looking like. And obviously you've got good competition, which will push Orji to get better. But I'm not sure if a Davis Warren or a Jack Tuttle is really at that level that Orji is in terms of ceiling. Now,
right.
In terms of going out there against Texas and just getting the job done and taking care of the ball and sustaining long drives, Tuttle or Warren might be your guy. But in terms of ceiling, it's Orji. And as long as he can prove to keep care of the ball and, sustain those drives, give the defense a nice break before they get back out on the field, it's looking like he's going to be the guy.
I think the ceiling point is a great point, right? I think everyone knows that once Orji gets more reps, he's the guy with the higher ceiling, more potential towards the end of the year. I think that Texas game, at least as a fan base, brings in some anxiety, being so early, not having the 3 easy non-conference games to start your season. But
yeah,
again, in this new world of college football, that doesn't end your season. Losing that game, you obviously want to win it. We've talked about the fire starter that can be. But I think you got to pick who you think the best quarterback is for the whole year and not try and talk about, well, we've got Texas. Do we want to, and I feel like Kirk Campbell said that, like, we're going to make this decision. There's no looking back, no second guessing. We're making the decision and going with it. So, and he's also said things like, look, Orji's going to play no matter what. Right. Yeah. So you're talking about a situation where whatever Davis Warren brings advantageous in the passing game, however you view it, how many snaps is Orji going to play where you get to a point where it's not even worth doing a 2 QB thing anymore?
Well, that, right? And everyone knows what's coming when Orji's out on the field. If you're that niche in that, I guess that predictable in terms of what you're going to do with Orji, it gets to a point where, yeah, as you said, what's the point? Everyone's going to know that he's going to run it, or more often than not, he's probably going to run it than throw it. If you're talking about specialized packages, but Yeah, I mean, I think you're kind of at the point now where it's like you just pick a guy and just go with it.
And there was a game last year too where Michigan sent out Orji, and the defense was expecting a run. I can't remember which game it was, but Orji went out there. Was it the Rose Bowl?
Mm-hmm.
He went out there and they faked like he was going to run, and he was about to pass, and even that wasn't open. So even when the defense is almost fully expecting a run, Alabama in that instance had the pass covered too. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
And in terms of, the debate about trusting him to throw the ball, as I've said all along, he wouldn't still be a quarterback if they didn't trust him to throw the ball. He'd be at another position where he could contribute. And I think that trust factor, we've heard the coaches speak about this too. He was on the field against Ohio State, Big Ten Championship Iowa, Alabama Rose Bowl, National Championship Washington. I know he didn't throw, but you took J.J. McCarthy off the field.
Yeah.
And put Orji out there. So there is that trust factor. He's shown in a moment. So we'll see. And look, I am pro Davis Warren. I'm a big fan of him and what he's been through in his story. And I think he's a really, really good quarterback. And he could have easily transferred to, another school and probably been a starter, and he stuck around and fought. So not a bad backup to have, or another guy in your pocket. So running back room is getting interesting. We had some intel the last couple of days, and probably in the last few minutes actually as well. Look, we know Donovan Edwards leads this group. We know Khalil Mullings is starter 1B in some aspect. We've gone back and forth about how those carries might look, but Mullings has gotten his praise this year. It looks really good as well. Max Bredesen in that fullback, H-back role, wants to be a bigger factor in the passing game, but one of the best blockers in the nation last year. He's a huge part. A lot of the conversation has been that RB3 spot, very similar to last year. We talked a lot about Benjamin Hall and CJ Stokes, and then Khalil Mullings ended up clinching that RB3 role at the end of camp. But look, healthy Benjamin Hall, Tavi Dunlap's been getting a lot of praise as well, returning, and the shape he's kind of been in. And Josh, I think you used this terminology, either exact or pretty close. And no surprise to anyone, Jordan Marshall is balling in fall camp.
Yeah, he's having a really good camp. And again, not a surprise to anyone that kind of pays attention to recruiting or what, Michigan's getting in terms of recruiting classes. Yeah, I mean, look, he's having an excellent camp, and he's risen up that depth chart. I mean, there's some that have made the argument that he could be RB3 right now
already.
So
my hot take's been I think Jordan Marshall finishes the year RB3. Now we're like, oh, maybe starts the year. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not 100% sure I fully buy that yet, considering Benjamin Hall and Tavi Dunlap kind of have that experience. But man, I mean, there's a lot to like with Jordan Marshall, and he's been consistently throughout camp being mentioned as someone that's just been performing. I know one person called him a dog in particular. So if you're into that kind of name using type of thing, then yeah, he's been a dog through camp. So yeah, it's not surprising to me to hear him in the mix at RB3. How that translates to him being on the field this fall, considering you've got Khalil and Donovan, we'll kind of see. But man, the more that a guy like Jordan Marshall can establish himself, the easier it's going to get for those two guys this year. I mean, the less carries they have to run, you don't have to worry so much about the tread on the tires.
Right.
But man, yeah, if he kind of takes that positive fall camp and turns that into momentum in the season, you're going to be talking about a pretty damn good running back, throughout his career at Michigan for sure.
What I'm most interested to see with running back 3 and in the running back room in general is, in comparison to last year, you had Blake Corum, who was obviously one of the best running backs in the country and was out there for the majority of the game, right? And when he wasn't out there, it was Donovan Edwards and Khalil Mullings saw, a few plays here and there, right?
Right.
Mullings did not have a solidified RB3 role, really. He was maybe five snaps a game, I'd guess. I'd have to go back and look, but he wasn't out there a whole lot.
Or he was getting a carry or two, yeah.
Right. So I'm interested to see, based on how good Corum and Edwards were last year, I'm interested to see now Corum's gone. You bring Edwards up to that lead back role. Mullings jumps up to RB2. I want to see how much of a role is running back 3, whether it's Marshall or Hall or Dunlap. How much of a role is that person going to have based on how well Edwards and Mullings do? If that makes sense, because Corum was just amazing last year. He never had to come off the field. Corum, he was a workhorse. And, we'll see if Edwards can do that this year. And he probably won't be as good as Corum was last year, but he's shown glimpses of what he can do when he gets 20, 25 carries a game, right? So I want to see how much of a role, whether it's Marshall, Hall, Dunlap, whoever it is, I want to see how many carries they're going to get, right? Because I guess it all depends on how much of the load Edwards and Mullings can carry.
That's a really good point. We've seen this running back room in the past arguably over rotate 4 guys, where it was just like constantly swapping guys in and out, and it felt like nobody could really get in a rhythm. And 21, you had Hassan Haskins, Corum, and then a freshman, Donovan Edwards. And then the last 2 years, it's largely just been Corum and Edwards. I'm with you. And also, if Orji is back there, how many carries is he getting, whether it's in the RPO game or not? I don't feel like Edwards is that 25 carry a game guy yet.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think so either.
And that's the only, and also too,
he might be close, but I just don't. I mean, you might in a desperate situation,
or if he's just balling,
that, or if you're like trying to hold on to cling onto a lead or trying to grind something out, maybe he might be, but like I don't know if he's that guy day in and day out.
I think it's interesting too, because you could argue, let's call it a top 4 right now of Edwards, Mullings, Hall, and Marshall. I think all 4 of those guys have different skill sets.
Yeah.
Right. So will Michigan be more situational this year? We've talked about Mullings potentially being the short yardage guy, or even an early down guy if he can continue to get those 5 yards every single time. And look, if Edwards is the guy, if anything, I want Edwards getting most of his carries late in the game. I want him attacking a worn down defense, right?
Yeah.
I guess we saw what he did against Washington early too. So, to Brock's point, when Corum's been hurt, we've seen Edwards do the job. So Hall is bigger. I mean, he's more like Mullings in terms of what is he, 6'1", 230 or something like that. He's a big kid. But he's got some shiftiness to him too. And Marshall, look, we've been hesitant to say the Blake Corum comparisons at times, but also I know Josh spent some time with him as well and just said, look, character-wise too, leadership, off the field, work ethic, like it's extremely comparable. And then on the field, the lateral cuts, the vision, and things like that. And then Sharon Moore said it out loud. He compared him to Blake Corum, right? Yeah. So no one's predicting. Thank you, Juju. Oh, he's only 5'11". Okay, but 234. It's a big boy for Ben Hall. No one's predicting that he's going to finish his career the best running back in Michigan football history. It's not fair to put on anybody, but just that guy that can get you those extra few yards and has the vision, right, isn't going to lose yards. That's a big piece too. We haven't talked a lot about. Haskins and Corum especially never got tackled behind the line, right? Never had those drive killers. So, I don't think we know. It's going to depend on what happens on the field. I think Edwards is going to obviously have the first chance to earn bell cow type carries, and then we'll see what ends up happening with guys carving out roles. But the point is, you lose Blake Corum, and you feel like the running back room is a strength. That's pretty good. That's pretty good.
Yep.
I saw somebody ask, he comes up every time we talk about it, about Cole Cabana. Josh has beaten this drum for a while. Dude hasn't been healthy for 2 years. He's dealt with some injuries. He's been healthy in this camp, it sounds like. He's added some weight as well. He's over 200 pounds too. And still speedy, fast. I think it's going to be tough to break into. I mean, we're already talking about how the carries are going to get split between 4 dudes.
Yep.
To Brock's point, we've seen that RB3 not necessarily get a lot of carries in the past. I hope he gets a chance on special teams to make a lot of plays, maybe even as a gunner or even in the return game. I don't know. But the idea of moving him to receiver, He's got some Chris Evans vibe to him, I guess, but it's always easy to say, yeah, just go play receiver.
Yeah, right.
But
Well,
he
yeah,
was
if it was
a
easy.
great pass catching running back
Yeah,
in high school. That is a weapon in his game for sure.
right. If it was that easy, the coaches have already would have done it by now.
Yeah.
So,
So
you know, look, we'll kind of, I don't know how. It's kind of one of these things where it's like you fit in where you fit in. Like you find a spot to fit in, you know, whether it's, as you mentioned, a gunner on special teams, you know, a return, maybe a returner, doubtful returner right now,
yeah.
but you just have to, it's one of those situations where maybe it's not clear on the depth chart where you sit. You just kind of have to figure it out, find a role, carve your own niche. And that's kind of what Cabana is facing right now. And it's unfortunate because he's, you know, he's a really like elite athleticism guy, but man, it's like you have to. I mean, if you're so far behind the 8 ball when you're injured the past 2 camps that have really kind of set you back, it's tough to.
It's almost like you're a freshman,
right? Yeah. So you know, it's we'll see kind of how it factors in, but you know, right now you got so many guys ahead of you. You got to do some pretty incredible things to, you know, in order to kind of get that playing time. But, you know, we'll see. We've seen it happen before. So definitely not ruling it out. But again, there's a bit of an uphill climb there in terms of that depth chart landscape at running back.
Yeah. You feel like Cabana might be a year away in terms of, you know, next year Michigan loses Edwards, loses Mullings, and at that point it might be wide open for him. So, you know, he's in a tough spot, but, you know, he's got a lot of potential. So,
yep. And to your point, next year he might be fighting Micah Kaapana for reps as the speedy back too. So,
yeah.
Look, they're taking 2 really good running backs in every class, you know, so it's a numbers game. Not everybody's going to have their breakout, right? But we'll see. All right, wide receiver. So a few things have become clear, I think, throughout fall camp. Tyler Morris, which I've got XZ slot here. This is more just where I think they're going to play primarily.
Yeah.
Samaj is going to play all over. I think it's starting to sound like Morris might play an X role a lot as well. So just
you got to put him somewhere.
Right. But Tyler Morris and Samaj Morgan are kind of in their own tier right now. Those are going to be the 2 guys that are always on the field at wide receiver. That's what the coaches have said. And it's really starting to feel like Tyler Morris is the one expected to be the best wide receiver in this group.
Yeah.
They've talked about him, you know, elevating his game in terms of being an all-around receiver. He's been compared to Ronnie Bell. He's been compared to Roman Wilson. And that's kind of why I have him as the Z, because that's what that role has been the last few years. The guy that kind of plays everywhere, short, intermediate, and deep routes. The guy that's scrambling, trying to find empty space for a quarterback that's under pressure, right? The go-to guy. We know what Samaj Morgan can do. I wrote an article, I think it was like a month ago, just kind of breaking down his numbers and what kind of year I think he can have if he's used differently, i.e. not just behind the line of scrimmage, letting him get in some crossing routes and get a little deep downfield as well. Fred Moore, no surprise. We've talked about him being that wide receiver 3, probably the X guy because he is 6'1". He's got the most height of the MO receivers, the MO receivers. But look, he's fast. Fred Moore is fast, and he didn't get a lot of attention in that group with Morgan and Carmelo because he wasn't an early enrollee, maybe a little bit behind, but he's right there. And then things are getting kind of interesting, right? CJ Charleston, the transfer in, has been featured. Looks like he can be a guy that can either play the Z role or get in the slot. And again, behind the line of scrimmage, crossing routes, do some versatile things. He brings some experience to the group. And then they're trying to find somebody else in that outside role. Morian Walker's obviously back in Ann Arbor after a spring trip to Ole Miss. Heard some good things about him in camp, but again, until that translates to the field, that I'll believe it when I see it kind of thing in that spot. And then obviously Peyton O'Leary, one of our favorite hype machine candidates in years past, is there. And then Kendrick Bell, Ronnie's brother, has been getting a lot of talk as well as a potential rotational guy with some height. But yeah, this group, look, it's interesting. You lose Roman Wilson and Cornelius Johnson. That's a lot of targets. It's a lot of receptions. It's a lot of experience. but this group is quietly coming together, looking like it might be different, right? This is going to be a lot of yards after catch. That's going to be the focus here. It's going to be a different group. It looks like it could be really good, actually.
Yeah. I mean, I think pretty much everyone that we talked about during the during the spring and during the offseason have kind of fallen into place like we thought they would. Like Fred Moore being, in that X role, Tyler Morris, expected to lead the room and lead the way, and then Samaj kind of getting his game into being an all-around type of guy. I think everyone's kind of done what they're supposed to do in that regard in terms of where they slot on the depth chart. So, you might have some question marks behind, the guys like Moore and Morris, but, you have to factor in the tight end position as well here too. I mean, obviously Colston Loveland, Marlon Klein, is obviously going to be another receiving threat, and he's got that uber athleticism. He can almost be your deep threat just from his athleticism alone in terms of being one of the fastest guys on the team. So, ideally you would like to see Morion Walker take the next step. I haven't really heard very much about him, but I haven't heard anything bad, if that kind of makes sense. Like he's just doing his thing, So I've heard a lot about CJ Charleston, though. A guy that has seen a lot of ball. Yeah, say what you will about Youngstown State, but if you've seen ball, you've seen ball, and that's exactly what he brings. He brings some experience.
Sounds like a LeVar Ball quote.
Yeah. He's played Big Ten programs before, so this is a position where they cannot afford any major losses. Like this, they need these guys to step up.
It's a good point, actually.
Yeah, you're granted you have the tight end position to kind of lean on a little bit, but again, like it's very top heavy, and even then the still kind of question marks about what a guy like Fred Moore can do, or what Samaj can do outside of his gadget stuff last year. I mean, obviously he's more than a gadget player, but I mean, you need an Morion Walker to take a next step. I mean, you don't necessarily need Kendrick Bell to do it, but if you can, that's great.
They haven't had that guy for the last couple of years, so if you get him, right? We thought Andrew Anthony was going to be that in his sophomore year. We thought Darius Clemens was going to be it last year.
Right.
Cornelius, as good as Cornelius has been, a little bit inconsistent on some of the deep throws. So look, you haven't had it for 3 years. So if you find it, sweet, cherry on top, in my opinion.
And let's call it what it is. Their passing game has not exactly been the most dynamic passing attack in the world the last how many years. But again, you don't need it to be. If you've got talented receivers and you got a quarterback that can get them the ball, you can win a national championship. I mean, Michigan that last year was the blueprint of that. So you don't necessarily have to be this dynamic passing attack. And I know the fans like that because it's fun to watch and it's the sexy thing that you can run, have all these dynamic receivers. But sometimes playing the boring football is the winning football that can, get you the tough wins. And the last couple of years have proven it, man. Like they can get away with boring football and not necessarily having the most dynamic passing attack. So my big question is, what happens if the running game's not clicking? What happens then if you're forced to throw the ball and you're having issues getting yards on the ground? How does that kind of change things? Because we haven't really seen that much with Michigan over the last couple of years because their ground game seems to always be clicking. So, I mean, by far, this is the biggest, question mark on the team, in my opinion, outside of quarterback. So they'll need a couple of good bounces. I mean, my dark horse pick is Amarion Stewart, seeing some time making that Samaj-like bounce from, kind of being on the outside looking in to playing time. I think Stewart's got that, lightning track speed just like Samaj does. And I think that really puts, Michigan in a good position to, utilize that kind of athleticism. So, again, Tyler Morris taking a leadership role is big. He's done that. You just need to see Fred Moore and Samaj kind of take a next step. And don't get me wrong, I think they'll be fine if they can do that. But this is kind of the razor thin line here of make it or break it.
Trevor, I don't know if you have a separate slide for tight ends, but I think it's important here to okay, yeah, there it is. Well, I think it's important to talk a little bit about Colston Loveland because
so we can lump these two together because to Josh's point, I mean Loveland is arguably wide receiver one at this right. I mean,
yeah.
And just to piggyback off what Josh said, I think it's important to note that in the wide receiver group that you just had up there, Trevor, there is not a guy other than Amarion Walker who is taller than 6'2". I mean, every other player on there is 6'2" or shorter. And while 6'2", is tall if you're just walking on the street as a wide receiver, Michigan needs a big body guy. I mean, every football team needs that. And Michigan doesn't necessarily have that in the wide receiver room unless Amarion Walker takes a huge step and, establishes himself as a big bodied outside receiver. And I just think that makes it all the more important for Colston Loveland to establish himself as that. He's 6'5", 245, and while he may not be on the outside all the time, he's a guy where if they need a completion and they're throwing a 50-50 ball, Colston Loveland's going to be the guy. And the rest of the wide receiver room is kind of just those smaller, twitchy, athletic guys. Tyler Morris,
speed and space.
Yeah, there you go, Josh. Yeah, right there. But yeah, I think just looking at this, it's gonna really, it's really going to depend on Colston Loveland in the passing game. I think you're going to see him be the leading receiver on this team, and I think his role is going to be huge. Honestly, I really do.
I agree completely. Go ahead.
I was just going to add just to Steve's comment there, the most recent one. I know Michigan doesn't throw a whole lot of 50-50 balls, but you did see it in the Big Ten championship game in 2022. Colston Loveland going up on that pass from McCarthy there in the end zone. It does happen. I know it's not
well, and Orji might do it more.
Yeah, you never know.
Yeah,
never know.
Brock, to your point on Loveland, regular viewers of this show will know these stats I'm about to say, which is Colston Loveland took 20% of his snaps from the outside last year. That was the most in the country for a tight end. I bet that number's higher this year. A lot of that has to do with the rise of Marlon Klein and the confidence that the team has in him, being able to play as that second tight end, play in line. I saw somebody bring up the 7-for-7 stat. Yeah, Loveland it's not when he's split out, it's when they target him deep. So on throws over 20 yards or more, Loveland went 7-for-7 for 235 yards and 3 touchdowns last year.
Yeah, that's
throw it deep to Colston Loveland, please.
Yeah,
come on. So I think that category of stats could go up this year for sure. And somebody brought up Edwards too. Look, again, he had 30 receptions or 30. I can't remember if it was 33 targets, 30. Either way, he had around 30 receptions last year. And just like Samaj, you're good, Juju. Just like Samaj, his average depth of target was like 2 yards because so much of the screen game and in the flat. And then you see when you cycle him out wide against Purdue, and Jake Butt's literally calling it from the press box, hitting Edwards deep. I hope they use him more in that way. We could see Edwards and Mullings on the field at the same time and Edwards splitting out. They could get creative. So look, in this tight end group, Loveland, Klein, we've talked about them. They're the clear 1 and 2. Klein's obviously tasked with replacing AJ Barner, who I think was a much better receiving threat than Michigan ever needed to use him for.
Yeah.
I mean, he had his big game against Michigan State, but there was a lot of potential there that they didn't get to as a blocker. Again, up there with Bredesen. I think actually he might have ended up graded as the better blocker. Either way, 2 really, really good blockers there. The name we're hearing, like you've got the 2 freshmen and the 2 sophomores. Marshall and Prescorn tend to be more like Loveland in terms of receivers trapped in tight end bodies. Deacon Tonielli, Hogan Hansen, maybe those bigger inline tight ends. It sounds like Deacon Tonielli, who actually I thought might add weight, looks like he lost a little bit of weight.
Mm-hmm.
He might be taking the step in that tight end 3 role in line. Marshall's had a good camp as well. And I do want to shout out maybe the future of the H-back position, and we could see him this year. Jalen Hoffman, if you're looking for a name you're not real familiar with that could make some plays this year, definitely for the future. He's been getting some run in that H-back kind of role behind Bredesen as well.
Yeah, he's been mentioned a few times by coaches and players of a guy that probably slots right into that H-back role here in the future. That walk-on type, that scrappy walk-on type that they covet so much that Michigan does. So, I think Deacon Tonielli is probably having the better camp than Zach Marshall right now, but Zach Marshall is also having a really good camp. So, it's the more depth you have at that position, the better. The more you can kind of utilize Colston Loveland in different type of roles and Marlon Klein especially. I mean, that guy, when I tell you, I mean, he's on the Bruce Feldman's freaks list. I mean, and usually when a Michigan player is on a freaks list, that almost always turns into something. You're talking about Kenneth Grant in the past, Chris Jenkins. Michigan's had just a ton of guys on that list, and the hit rate on that list is insane. So I've full expectations for Marlon Klein to make himself to be someone in this offense to have a role. So, the fact that you've got Tonielli in there as well. I mean, you're talking about a 6'5", 240-ish type of tight end. I mean, that's a good size for, a redshirt freshman at this point. Man, I mean, look, the position is going to be ridiculously deep, especially if a guy like Zach Marshall takes the next step. We haven't even touched on Brady Prescorn or Hogan Hansen either. So, will they play this year? I don't know. I mean, I don't know, considering you've got Tonielli and Marshall doing what they're doing, and I don't know if they really need them. But again, if they're worthy of playing time, they're going to play. But a year of seasoning for both of those guys, I think you've got something there in the future. So there's a lot to like with this tight end this tight end group. It takes so much of the pressure off of the wide receivers too if these guys are hitting. So again, if Loveland and Klein can turn into some legit receiving threats, and there's nothing out there that suggests that they won't, that really takes a lot off of your receiver group, a lot of that pressure. So a lot to like there for sure.
You've got a new starting quarterback that wouldn't mind the safety net of a
absolutely
as well.
100%.
Yeah, you've almost got to worry that the combo of Colston Loveland and Marlon Klein might be so good that the younger guys like Zach Marshall, Brady Prescorn, Tonielli, and Hansen don't get a whole lot of playing time, especially considering Texas is week 2, and that's more than likely it's definitely not going to be a blowout, right? It's not going to be like Michigan just beating up on, the East Carolinas, the UNLVs, and the bullying.
It's not cooler if it was.
That'd be something else. That'd be a statement right there. But we'll see. Colston Loveland, Marlon Klein, if they perform very well, there may not be a path for those younger guys to get on the field.
Yeah, I hyped up Loveland a lot in his freshman year. He was kind of by beyond the depth chart pieces I would do. He was a guy I brought up a lot. And he obviously ended up having a strong finish to the year, but that took injuries to Michigan's top 2 tight ends. So you would hope if a Brady Prescorn or a Hansen rises, it's not because you lost somebody like Loveland or Klein. So somebody said a joke about what Marlon Klein's names translates to in German. The irony is it actually Klein is small. So go figure. Right, the Kleine, but let me get into some German for you guys real quick. All right, I can't fit the O-line on here full, so we'll kind of have to scroll. I don't know if anything's really changed in terms of the starter conversation, but we definitely kind of came into fall camp with I don't know. I don't know if concern's the right word, but look, Campbell said they need a couple more guys to step up from a depth standpoint.
Mhm.
We thought obviously competition would probably breed some of that. And it sounds like it might be. So Miles Hinton appears to be locked in at that left tackle spot. Josh Preeb, locked in at left guard. Raheem Anderson is pushing Greg Crippen at center. Anderson was moved around a little bit during that scrimmage on Saturday, played some guard as well. And then Nathan Afobe was pushing El Hadi at one point for right guard. Seems like he's going to be in that depth conversation at left guard. And then on the right side, it's the same thing. We have Giovanni El Hadi at right guard, Andrew Gentry, Jeff Percy, and throw Evan Lincoln there at times, competing for right tackle reps. And then Dominic, is it Giudice, right?
This is Gadis.
Gadis, not even close. All right. I can't look at it. That's what messes me up. But anyway, so Dominic has also had a really strong fall camp. So that starts to be your 9 guys that Michigan was hoping to find. I still feel like Crippen's going to be the guy at center. And I still feel like it might be Gentry, but Percy can't be slept on. And then Tristan Bounds is a guy people kind of forget he hasn't played. It's a big guy who's played left and right tackle. So look, the guys are there. There's been some development in fall. And again, we've kind of beat this drum. 5 new starters, but there is some experience. There is some age to this group.
I saw El Hadi, when was it? Friday. That guy is built like a brick shit house. I mean, that guy is just an absolute monster. Like there's no fat on this guy. Like he's just a monster. And you look at him and you go, well, that's the future right there. I mean, that the fact, and you look at him and you go, wow, the fact that he didn't leave where
100%.
Literally every other program in the country would have taken his scholarship in a heartbeat. The fact that he didn't leave, it's his time. He said so as much. This is his time.
He's 100% starting last year if Keegan or Zinter don't come back.
Right, exactly.
He's starting on most college football teams last year.
And the talk out of fall camp is that he's in a battle with Gadis right now. But I don't buy that. I mean, Gadis is going to play. I mean, he's the depth piece. He's done very, very well, but you're not.
It's El Hadi's turn.
You're not taking that opportunity away from him. I mean, you have to carry him out on a stretcher in order to him to not see the field. So, I just wanted to get that out of the way with El Hadi. But again, at center,
Giovanni El Hadi, brick shithouse.
I mean, that's
Josh Henschke.
Yeah, you just have to look at him in person. You think, holy crap, this dude is a monster. But at center, you look at Crippen and Anderson. I think it's like you get the sense that they'd be fine with either guy. To be honest with you, they'd be happy with either one taking that job. It's probably Crippen again, like El Hadi. It's one of those situations where he could have went anywhere. They technically recruited over him twice with out of the portal, to get Olu and obviously Nugent. Now it's like, yeah, it's your turn. It's your turn. So I do get the sense it's probably going to be El Hadi at center, but they'd be happy if it was Anderson too. So that's a very, very good battle to have. In my opinion, to have those two guys facing off against each other. And now I think, there's still like right tackle, still a battle, between Gentry and Percy and even Evan Links kind of bouncing in between tackle spots. We'll kind of see how that right tackle kind of works its way out. The big thing that the offensive line group has said is that they need 10 guys. I think right now they probably have 9. They might need a 10th guy, maybe like a Tristan Bounds to kind of step up and be that 10th guy. But 9, I mean, you're talking 9 for sure with Evan Link, probably going to be your jumbo package guy, kind of like that Trente Jones type of bigger package type of 7 guys. You need that jumbo guy. That's probably going to be Evan Link. So, coming into this, they were concerned about depth. Now, I think they don't have all of their questions answered, obviously, because you need to play. But a lot of their depth issues aren't as big of issues as they were in the spring. I think the losers of the position battles are going to be very key depth pieces, no matter who they are. So, we've seen multiple times, situations where Keegan's had to sit. Obviously, Zinter hurting himself against Ohio State, which is kind of a real fluky, unfortunate thing that happened. But again, this stuff happens, and you need the depth. And I think they have a lot of it right now. I don't think they fully have the depth that they had like last year, but I think they're happy with what they have heading into the season, considering it's technically new faces on the offensive line. I mean, really not new faces, but there's a lot of fresh, a lot of new on this line. But at the same time, the more things change, the more they stay the same. So, there's a lot to like with this offensive line for sure.
Yeah, they're definitely not as deep as they were last year in terms of being able to rotate guys in and replace, obviously, last year with Zinter going down and Trente Jones stepping in, Barnhart being able to move from right tackle to right guard very seamlessly. I don't think this year's offensive line is that deep and versatile, but I do think this year, in terms of at this point in fall camp, this year's offensive line, I feel like, has more of an advantage over last year's because, Josh, you've already reported Myles Hinton and Josh Pre are locked in at left tackle and left guard, respectively. Like, those two are locked in. And I think we all agree it's going to be Greg Crippen and El Hadi at center and right guard. And at that point, you're just looking at a battle between Jeff Percy and Andrew Gentry at right tackle. Whereas last year, you had Drake Nugent, Trevor Keegan, and Zach Zinter locked in, but there was no idea what Michigan was going to do at either of the tackle positions. You had four guys.
Into the season.
Right, yeah. You had four guys competing for those two jobs, like going into Big Ten play. And I think for Michigan, as far as we all agree, having basically four spots locked down, I think that's gonna help them, especially, like we've talked about basically all off season with Texas in week 2. They don't have time to wait around and move guys around and see who's going to play well where and what's the best five in terms of combination in that. They got to go with what they have, and they have 4 of the 5. I think we all agree already, which is huge.
Yeah, I would think after next week you start to feel like we're getting close to game prep. I want to have my ones figured out. Juju nails this. We've talked about this. They had 4 guards on the offensive line last year. Ladarius Henderson, literally, I mean, I know he started at left tackle, but moved to left guard for the 2 years he started at Arizona State, moved back to left tackle here. And then Carson Barnhart, part of the reason Michigan was able to take advantage of, or not take advantage, but the blow from the Zinter injury wasn't as significant, was because Barnhart was a more natural right guard, a run blocking guard. And Jones had the potential to be a starter level right tackle. People forget he started at right tackle in 2022 before he got hurt. So I think that is an interesting potential advantage this year, where Andrew Gentry is a guy who's been penciled in as a tackle going back to his high school days, right? One of the top 100 recruit. Percy has literally started at left tackle. He's a tackle. Myles Hinton, I think I posted a comment. We've heard this a few times. Dude's just got to realize how good he is.
Yep.
Right. That light bulb's just got to go off. Pre starting experience at guard. And we've talked about Ahadi, basically a starter level guard who's been in this program for 4 years. And it'll be like he's been a starter. When he filled in for Keegan, there was little to no drop off. Yep. Right. That's high praise. So it's, to Brock's point, that cohesiveness, right? Working as a unit together, figuring out who the 5 are, getting that communication down. We saw some hiccups with that early in the year last year. So, all right, let's get to the big boys. Defensive tackle. We've gotten some clarity on a couple spots in fall camp. The obvious, this group is led by Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham. They're pretty good.
Shocking. Breaking news there.
It's going to be interesting to see with Wink from a base set. Do we see more 4-man fronts, 2 defensive tackles, 2 edge rushers? Does he do a lot of what he's done in the past, which is 3, 4, 5 man, however you want to categorize it, but 3 defensive tackles. Minter tended to do that on early downs and obvious running situations, but that'll be maybe a potential difference with Wink coming in. But look, healthy Rayshon Benny from the start of fall camp, perhaps to Josh Henschke. I pushed back on him a little bit on one of our episodes. I'm like, I don't know if he's going to be ready day one. I know he's going to be ready for the season. But yeah, he's been healthy from the start of camp. And then you've got a couple risers here to watch. Actually, I'm going to say 3. All 3 of them in terms of backups in the rotation here. Trey Pierce has been, I think Josh has been a fan of him for a long time.
Yep.
Feels like he's going to be a factor in rotations. Obviously, we don't know how much Graham and Grant are going to come off the field. You want to keep them fresh, though, right? They're not going to maybe come off as much as they did when you had Chris Jenkins, but Trey Pierce is there. Ike Iwana. There we go. He's gone from kind of like, yeah, we really like what he's doing in that spot to like serious consideration, having a strong camp. He's going to be a player. Coaches really like him.
Yep.
And Enoetta goes out and answers the question for me in terms of edge or defensive tackle, shows up 310 pounds for fall camp.
Yeah.
Absolute truck. And he could still play outside. He could still do some strong side edge stuff too, but Enoetta's gonna play this year and he's gonna be really good. So
yeah, it's
kind of a loaded group, man.
It's kind of like Etta and Cam Brandt kind of just flipped.
It feels
on the depth chart, one from inside to outside and the other from inside to outside. So again, we know what Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham is. I think the big question now is just obviously everyone else behind him. That picture that Trey Pierce tweeted out of him. My goodness gracious. Oh my, that guy is going to be an absolute monster. I mean, what Jason pointed out, he's got that Mozzie size to him.
When you're 315 pounds and look that lean.
Yeah.
And then have like cannons for arms. Like, he's
going
to bully people, man.
That's going to be nasty. And that's going to be particularly important with Pierce and Etta to kind of help out Benny, because we don't really know, is he fully caught up? Is he fully up to speed? I would get the sense that he would be, considering the injury happened in January. But you right now, you're going to have to kind of look towards the future, because let's be honest, Grant and Graham aren't going to be here next year. They're not going to be around next year. They're going to be in the NFL. So
it would either be really bad that they're back or an unbelievable NIL miracle.
That too. Yeah.
I mean, Graham's probably a top 10 pick.
Yeah.
Like the height. We've seen some people say he would have been a top 10 pick this year.
Yep.
I mean, just unreal. And Grant has first round potential for sure too. So.
Yeah. Enjoy them while you got them, folks, because they're not going to be around for long.
At least Graham's played his whole career.
Yeah.
Some guys you lose in their junior year, and that was like the only year they really played, and you feel like you got robbed.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yep. But really all it comes down to is this depth behind him. You got to build it up. You'd have to imagine Pierce getting some time. Etta, by all means is going to get time. But, I'm kind of curious.
That's not crazy.
No.
That could legitimately happen.
Depending on the QB situation. Yeah.
Yep.
That'd be amazing.
But there's the name. I'm looking at the depth right now. Barr, Beagle.
That's worth pointing out. They brought in 4 really good defensive tackles in this last class. Brooks Barr is back, and then Lorenzetti is moving he's gone back and forth with O-line and D-line. But
so I mean, Polly was a big boy too. So
what is he, 340 or something like that?
Yeah, he needs some strength and conditioning program work, but he's another one of those guys where he tweets a picture or whatever, and it's like, man.
Sue wasn't the first pick overall. Slow your roll. You're right, but he was the second pick, and he finished second in Heisman voting. Probably should have won it.
Yeah, should have been the first pick.
Well, if college football 25 is any indication, both Josh and I have had Mason Graham win the Heisman.
Yeah, he won the Heisman with me. Yep. He did.
He's a cheat code on that game. It's hilarious. But anyway, Brock, your thoughts?
I would just say what I'm most interested to see is how much can all of these depth guys improve, because clearly everyone knows Kenneth Grant and Mason Graham are going to be at their best when they're fresh. And if they're out there playing 60, 65, 70 snaps a game, toward the end, they're not going to be very fresh.
Right.
I think that's a big reason why Michigan was so dominant on defense last year, and why Grant and Graham were so good is because you had that rotation along with Chris Jenkins, Rayshawn Benny, those type of guys.
Cam Good.
Yeah, they were all just rotating in and out. I mean, I'm no stat nerd or snap counter by any means. I'd have to go back and check the official numbers, but they were playing 30?
It wasn't towards the end of the year that those guys started getting more than 30 snaps a game.
Yeah. I mean,
they rotated so much.
They were fresh at the end of games, and they were fresh at the end of the season, and that's what helped Michigan. Mm-hmm. And so I think, listen, if Rayshawn Benny can be healthy and good to go by the start of the season, that'll be huge. He's a great player. If Trey Pierce and Eno Etta and all these guys can develop and give Graham and Grant a rest, that's going to bode so well for Michigan going into the late in the fourth quarter. If Texas is driving with a chance to win the game, and you got to have Grant and Graham out there, if they're gassed, Michigan's in trouble. But if they're fresh, that's going to be huge. So I do think, the development of some of those younger depth guys is going to be critical for Michigan this year, just based on the sense that not only they can make their own plays and make a name for themselves, but just giving Grant and Graham a break. I think that's going to be so huge.
I have the numbers for you, Brock.
Great. I'd love to hear them.
Mason Graham played the most snaps of any defensive tackle last year with 442. That's nothing. Like, to put this in perspective for you, Jaden Mangamu just transferred from Michigan State, played like 700, right? So Graham did not top 30 snaps until week 10 against Purdue.
Unbelievable.
And that was only 31. And then the last games of the year, Penn State 43, Maryland 36, Ohio State 42. And then he played his most snaps at the end of the year, Alabama, Washington 48 and 46 respectively. So literally didn't top 50 once.
Wow.
I just don't know if that defense can ever even be recreated. I mean, that's
not from a depth standpoint.
Just unbelievable what Michigan had at that point.
But somebody brought up the best case scenario for any defense is being able to generate pass rush with your front four. We've already talked about Mason Graham might be the best pass rusher on this team at defensive tackle. Yep. Kenneth Grant had the only sack in the Washington. One of my favorite photos. Poor Michael Penix. that bus coming down on him and nowhere to go. Look, you're going to get pass rush from Graham and Grant this year, and we're going to get to this in a second. But the edge, I think the conversation's pretty similar, Brock, in terms of I think we feel really, really good about the starters. Do they have the depth, right? They had 4 starters at edge last year. There was little to no drop off between any of the 4, very comparable, similar snaps. I love hearing about Wink's comments about Derek Moore and Josiah Stewart. He's like, you rotated these guys?
Yeah.
Like, what? Right? They're the clear starters this year. But again, to Brock's point, that last play in the Rose Bowl, Derek Moore and Josiah Stewart both had huge roles in that. Those are guys that were fresh in overtime.
Yeah.
Right. So while I think both those dudes have double-digit sack potential, do you want them out there playing enough to get that? Right. So where's the depth going to come from? On the weak side with Stewart, we've been talking about TJ Guy for a couple of years. Sounds like, again, we'll have to see it translate to the field, but sounds like they feel good about him being in that weak side role. Keyshawn Bennett's not a guy to be slept on. He played actually quite a bit last year. He could be in the rotation. He's
been getting some shout outs too.
Merritt Kumba was somebody who was obviously a project coming in. He is far ahead of schedule, especially physically. He stuck out at the spring game. I'm like, whoa, right? So interested to see. Now that strong side role, Josh talked about this. Etta played there. Look, Etta and Brandt both played outside on all their snaps last year. In the spring, Etta kind of played at both spots. They actually felt like his defensive tackle play helped him with some of his pass rush as well. But he's up in weight and Brandt is down. So I've had Etta penciled in is that Derek Moore, and look, Moore's a guy too that depending on what happened with his weight could have moved inside, right? And he obviously lost weight last year. He's stuck at the strong side spot, but Brant's a guy to watch there. And then we've got a couple names. Look, Breon Ishmael, speaking of weight gain, that dude was a monster showing up into camp.
Yeah.
And then look, he's a freshman, but Dominic Nichols, you can't ignore the hype. When coaches are bringing up guys when they're not asked to,
Yep.
right?
Yeah, you
like,
listen to that stuff.
Right. Like with and then being isolated too, not just in a name drop. Like in my mind, I need to talk about Dominic Nichols, and I haven't yet. Right. So there's a group of dudes. Somebody's got to step up and give them that little to no drop off where they can rotate. But Derek Moore and Josiah Stewart returning for another year is very, very, very exciting.
Yeah. We've heard nothing but good things about both of those guys. Shocking, I know. One person just told me that they were flat out unblockable in camp. And I know people say that, I say that, and I've had a few people go, "Oh no, what does that mean about the offensive line?" It doesn't mean anything about the offensive line.
It's always that chicken or egg situation.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, it's like people think, an offense sometimes gets the better of a defense in camp. Last year too, we heard the same thing that, the defensive line was, just running just roughshod on the offensive line, and people were freaking out going, "Oh my God, is this going to be terrible?" No, it's just when you have really good players make really good plays, and that does not reflect on an entire position group of whether they're going to stink or not. So, yeah, look, both guys are just going to be insane.
It blocks Brock's face every time I put a comment up. So
I think you can make the argument that I think the edge group probably has more depth right now. Obviously that doesn't mean that won't change during the season, but I think there's more guys that I think you can play there, like a TJ guy. Even Chibia Nwuna is a guy from Plymouth, Michigan that has come out of nowhere. That's had a lot of good things to say.
Get that East Side hype, Josh.
Yeah. Plymouth, shout out Plymouth, Michigan. A kid that's worked hard and has worked his way into, being in the conversation. TJ Guy, again, like it could have left long ago.
Yep.
And no one would have blamed him. But is going to play. Kumba, I think he's going to play.
Nice little town, yeah.
It is, yeah.
I like The Rock.
Yeah.
Anybody? That was good.
No, I got it. I just didn't laugh.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Brock.
I got the joke.
Yeah, that was pretty
yeah. Look, there's depth there. I'm really intrigued about Dominic Nichols. I could absolutely see him getting some time. But yeah, it's if they can hit on some of this, man, they're going to be just filthy.
Am I mistaken, or did Sharon Moore say that Dom Nichols is the freshman he's most excited for?
Yeah.
Yep.
Say he's going to play.
Yep.
Yeah. I believe it.
That was at Big Ten Media Days too, I believe. And it was like, and it wasn't even just like in a dump of like names where they like try to name everybody. Like I said, and somebody else brought this up too. When your head coach is a former OC and O-line coach, and he's calling out a specific passer, that's a dude.
Very true.
Right?
Yeah. I'm not going to go on the same spiel that I did about the interior defensive line, because I think it applies here for the edge, like you said, Trevor. Josiah Stewart, Derek Moore, how fresh do you want them to be? Yep. It all depends on the depth of the defensive line. But I want to touch on just the complete dominance that we're going to see from Josiah Stewart, Derek Moore, Kenneth Grant, and Mason Graham. I mean, how are offensive lines possibly going to go about blocking that? I mean, I can't even begin to think about what I would do if I was an offensive coordinator or an offensive line coach trying to get my guys to block those for. It's almost impossible. And I think you're going to feel pretty sorry for the Fresno States and Arkansas States this year when those four guys come trotting out fresh on the first series of the game. But it's going to be incredible. It really is. It's got to be the best starting defensive line Michigan has had in a long time. You got to think. I mean, they've had good individual players, obviously Hutch and Ojabo are there, but in terms of all across the board, straight up, those four guys, I think that's tough to beat.
16 was pretty good. It's 16
Yeah,
and 17
16,
too. Yeah.
yeah.
But Charlton, Wormley, Monet, Mo Hurst,
Woodley's had some really
Glasgow
good lines with them.
Yeah. But I think to Brock's point, in terms of like combination of like elite single guys, right? I think those were really, really good units that had some good talent. But like we've talked about Graham, top 10 pick. Grant could easily be a first round pick.
Yep.
I've seen Derek Moore and Stewart in ranges of like 2nd to 5th. Obviously, it'll depend on their production, but those are guys that could easily be day 2 picks or even creep into the first round with a double-digit sack year. I mean, it's ridiculous. And somebody pointed out too, in terms of last year, that was arguably your 2 best pass rushers anyway. Stewart was. Post Nebraska, once they got into the Big Ten schedule, Stewart was the best pass rusher.
Yep.
He's gotten comfortable now that, you know, they kind of swapped his position at Coastal, and then he kind of had to swap back coming here. Man, quick answer. Pick a guy. I know Henschke's choice on this. We've kind of gone back and forth all off season. Brock, I'll be interested to hear what you say. But among the 2 leading edge guys, who finishes the year with more sacks? I've been Stewart guy. Josh, I'm assuming you're sticking with Moore.
I do agree with Juju's point here, though.
Oh yeah.
I'm going Derek Moore.
You're going Moore too? All right, cool.
I'm going Derek Moore, but
there's no wrong answer.
No.
It won't be by a lot, I don't think, but
no,
I do think Moore will edge Stewart out. Detroit Lions fan made a good point up here with add wild card of a blitzing Jashawn Barham.
I was just going to get to that.
What a segue by Brock. Look at the young fellow learning.
So it is a good point because, and somebody else kind of brought up too, look, Wink's going to put 7 guys on the defensive line and you don't know who's coming or going.
Yeah.
Right. And a big piece of that is going to be Jashawn Barham. Josh, is it fair to say he's the leader of the hype train at this point? I mean, it feels like his name, not only does it get dropped the most often, but usually people are hesitant to the level of like expectation. I've heard better than Colson, bigger Devin Bush, like just absurd comparisons. People are really, really excited about Jashawn Barham.
Yeah, that's been consistent since he stepped on campus. You know, he's just been like the consistent guy that everyone talks about. The kids, I mean, and look, he's proven that too. It's not like this is, you know, just some random guy that they're hyping up. I mean, this has been, you know,
he was really, really good at Maryland.
Yeah, he was really good at Maryland. And I remember Sharon, you know, in an interview, I forget where, I think it was with Joel Klatt, where he's like, this guy's a problem. And you know, this guy is tough to game plan against. And now he's on the right side of things in Sharon's regard. But
yeah, the only player that didn't play for Bowling Green that got an interception on JJ last year.
Yeah. So again, it's Jashawn Barham, everyone else in terms of hype. But again, the linebackers are going to be very good. I think they're going to be really good. I mean, Ernest Hausman is kind of, I think, ready for that larger role. Yes. Kind of had a chance last year to back up 2 really good guys, and experienced guys. But yeah, having those 2 back there, that's an experienced group. One, because Hausman did play with Nebraska, but yeah, I mean, athletic too. I mean, you don't gone to the days of the slow creeping linebackers that they have there. I mean, they've got those guys will be all over the field and you'll sense them. So now it comes down to the just the depth behind them and who kind of steps up there.
Yeah, Jashawn Barham is 6'3", 248, officially listed on the roster. And, going back to we were talking about the defensive line.
He's bigger than Stewart. That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And going back to the comment that the Lions fan made there, and your point, Trevor, you line those guys up on the line of scrimmage, and you bring Kenneth Grant, Mason Graham, all those guys, and a blitzing Jayshon Barham, almost 250 pounds coming at you. There's no stopping that. It's
nasty.
It's going to be really fun to watch, and I'm excited to see what happens. But yeah, Barham and Hausman are going to be dominant. I do worry a little bit about the depth. Jimmy Roller played here and there as a freshman. Obviously, was banged up last year and didn't see the field a whole lot. Micah Pollard hasn't played too much.
But they did throw him out first play of the Ohio State game to have man coverage on Stover. That was a nice look.
Yeah.
Poor guy.
He got burned
they
there and then
hung him out the
immediately
drive.
came off the field.
Jason tried saying Barham, and he said Warhammer, and I was like, "Oh, is that his nickname? I didn't know that was." He said, "I got auto corrected to Warhammer. I like it." Yeah,
That's badass.
That is badass. Yeah,
that's the best autocorrect ever.
Hausman looked really good last year. Didn't play a ton because Colston and Barrett obviously stayed out a ton. He looks bigger and stronger this year. Him and Barham have really been linked up a lot as well. We've seen them coming and going from practices and spending a lot of time together. I think that's going to just be the next great duo. Either one of those guys can affect the run game, pass rush, drop into coverage. Barham just feels like waking a sleeping giant, though. And we've talked about these transfers too. When you're really, really good on a defense that isn't as good as, a top 5 defense like Michigan has, when you come to play here, your play gets elevated because now you've got this incredible defensive front in front of you. You've got the best corner in the nation in Will Johnson over there. You can trust these other guys to do their job. He's going to be only even better. Like it's just crazy to think about, but on pass rush, he was only sent 83 times in pass rush snaps last year. He had 21 pressures. So he created a pressure 25% of the time he was involved on a pass rush snap. That's ridiculous.
Warhammer.
So, yeah, Warhammer's so good.
I'm just reading comments now.
Yeah.
I've tried to get women to call me Warhammer for years. That's funny.
That is pretty good.
I do think Rolder, the talk behind Rolder is kind of unfair because he really, he's just been hurt. He's been banged up, so it's like he's kind of, and then obviously the one-on-ones with athletic tight ends, and then he gets burned. I think he's better than that, and he's kind of been in a situation where he's just being put, just been put in bad spots. So I think if he can stay healthy, he'll get some rotation. But the main guy that I'm kind of circling right now is Cole Sullivan.
And he's come up a bunch in the comments as well. People asked about, do I expect him to go to an edge? I have. That's been my expectation as a recruit, just because he was 6'4" and had this frame that looked like it could easily filled out. And then we've talked about the Chase Winovich comparisons, but he only added 10 pounds this offseason. And not only are they keeping him at linebacker currently, but he had a really, really good spring game, and a bunch of other dudes left.
Yeah.
And Cole Sullivan is quickly pushing up the depth chart, and along with Dominic Nichols, has been a guy that the staff has named as a freshman too good not to play.
Yeah, I would not be surprised if he played early. Looked good in the spring game, looks the part. We've been told that, he kind of checks all those, to quote it, checks all the boxes. So in terms of a linebacker, where his outlook is after this year, I don't know. But right now, it's definitely, a linebacker role. If he's edge, I think he's got the body type to do it. But if the coaches like him at linebacker, there's no reason to not have him at linebacker. So that's kind of where it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's come up a bunch. true freshman guy. I think he's right up there with Dom Nichols and Jordan Marshall as freshmen who
Those are
could
the three,
impact
for sure.
the most. Yeah, those are the top three. Really excited to see what he can do. I saw him when I was in LA covering the Rose Bowl during those practices. I saw him up close and personal.
What a brag.
Yeah, that was a cool moment. But I mean, that dude's a giant.
Yeah, when I was in LA for the Rose Bowl, I just
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
But yeah, he's a giant. I mean, I'm standing 5-10 feet behind him and just looking up at him. He's huge. And like you said, Trevor, 6'4". Could he move to edge? Maybe, but I think at this point in time, he's gonna focus on linebacker.
Yeah, we'll see. He could easily stay there. He could have a Jalen Harrell like development where, Harrell kind of had his own little role as more of like a Sam linebacker for a long time. He really wasn't part of the edge per se until last year. Consistent weak side edge player. He kind of had his own little Sam role. Somebody brought up the Viper role as well. My thing just for why I would prefer Sullivan in a spot like that is just because when I watch his tape, most of his best plays are in the backfield. He is just a ball pursuit killer. He can get sacks, and he's a great tackler and just a heavy hitter. And he just, to me, a guy that I want getting into the backfield and not necessarily dropping into zone or coverage as much, but we'll see. I mean, obviously the coaches know better than I do. So and he's only a freshman. If he's already in this conversation, we'll see how he plays, how he develops. But this is another group led by the two dudes. And then, Rolder and Hood, they've been talked about for the last couple of years. They've got to take that next step and be a part of whatever rotations Michigan looks to do at linebacker. So cornerback, I'm going to cut it off a little bit, but that's okay. Oh, there we go. Look, we might have an answer for CB1. Sounds like it's this Will Johnson kid.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
Might be all right. Look, it's nice coming into a year and having the best corner in college football for you, to the point of Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant, possibly Barham. Enjoy him while you can. He will not be back next year. That's another top 10 pick, most likely as well.
Yep.
CB2, I have this listed as Orr, but the impression we got even before Big Ten, or before the camp started at Big Ten Media Days, I was a little surprised. Jair Hill was pretty much called the starter at CB2.
Yeah.
Amir Hall, Ricky Johnson, the two transfers competing behind him, obviously bring experience, something Michigan needed to add to the room. Good pickups there. Whether, I think Hill's going to be the starter anyway, but it's good to hear them talk about him like that so early. Going back to Jesse Minter last year, saying he thought Jair Hill could have a Will Johnson-like ascension. I want him starting and having a great year this year because he's probably CB1 next year. Mm-hmm. So that's really good to hear. The nickel spot continues to be an interesting question because, look, you got to replace Mike Sainer still. and I don't know how you do that per se. I don't think you do it with one dude for sure. But the guy, I mean, I talked about last year before Josh Wallace transferred in, if they didn't have a CB2 answer, I was like, how about Zeke Berry plays nickel? Mike Sainer still moves outside. I've been high on Berry for a while. McBurrows is still in that conversation. McBurrows can also play outside corner as well. He's going to play quite a bit in rotations. He's a versatile corner. Those are your guys right there, in my opinion. It's Johnson, Hill, and then some combination of Berry and McBurrows.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be Berry. I really do. Just hear really good things about Zeke Berry. Him flying all over the field, having this is a really good camp. And I think that's the thing. And the unfortunate thing about Berry is that Berry is probably really good in his own right, but he's going to be, whether fortunate or unfortunately, going to be compared to Mike Sainer still. And no one's going to be at that level. No one's going to be at that level. And that's not necessarily to mean someone's going to be bad. It's just that, you're replacing a program legend. Let's be honest. Let's call it what it is. Mikey Sainer still program legend. But I think Barry can carve his own role in his own regard. And I do think there is a situation where you can kind of see Barry all, in different spots on the field, kind of like Brandon Hillman as he's kind of getting some run at nickel too.
Yep.
I think, I see a situation where, Barry is going to be kind of that Mike Sainristil role. And I hate calling it that, but there's no other way to call it, because as I just said, it's unfair to compare him to Mike Sainristil, but he will have kind of that role. I think McBurrows is more of a traditional type of nickel guy. I'm not sure how much flexibility you have there. Probably a little bit. You can probably put him on the outside, but Barry, I mean, you can put him at safety too if you wanted to. So, now the big question for me is kind of who wins that CB2 role. So I think that'll come down. I mean, it's probably Jair Hill. But again, you've got the benefit of depth there. They really like Amir Hall. They like him a lot. They thought they were really excited to pick him up out of the portal. And again, if you're an FCS All-American, you can play ball. I mean, the level of competition is different, but if you're playing at the top of your craft, you're playing well. So, and then Ricky Johnson, I don't know how that'll factor in, probably some sort of depth piece, but there's depth, which is good.
Shout out Lamar Morgan.
Yeah. I mean, Lamar Morgan's done just an excellent job. Portal recruiting, just has done a really good job so far. So if we can kind of put that all together and see that, mixed up and with the development piece of it, if he can do that, they'll be rolling. So, and they'll be continuing to kind of bring out some stud defensive backs that they've done in the past couple of years. So, it's going to be intriguing. They have options. It's just kind of how they're going to, how they're going to use them is going to be another thing. And how they develop too, obviously, is the most important part.
What stands out to me is that there have been so many comparisons between Amir Hall and Josh Wallace. And, players have talked about it, coaches have talked about it, how they're very similar, both in terms of personality and in terms of player type. And I think right now at this point in time, like you mentioned, Josh, it seems that Jair Hill is ahead of Amir Hall right now at this point in time in the race for CB2. I think that speaks to the improvement of Jair Hill. Because last year that wasn't the case. Josh Wallace started essentially from the get-go. If I remember right, Hill might have played.
He played early, and then it ultimately became a red shirt, and then DJ Waller got a lot of those snaps.
Yeah. Wallace took over quickly in terms of that second cornerback spot last year, but right now on August 11th, 20 days away from the season, Jair Hill seems to be ahead of Amir Hall, which I think is very interesting. It does speak to how Hill has improved. It's tough when you got two cornerbacks called Hill and Hall. It's tough to keep
those names up.
I'm still struggling with Morgan Morris at wide receiver. So
yeah, but Josh hit on all the depth stuff. It'll be interesting to see how those guys develop. But you got Will Johnson, and it's going to be probably either Jair Hill or Amir Hall for that second spot. And I agree with Josh. I think it'll be Zeke Berry there at nickel.
I've been pro Berry for a while, so I probably am rooting for that a little bit. I think he brings that versatility in terms of being able to play in coverage, being able to drop back like a safety, being able to play man, and what was a very underrated piece of Mike Sainristil, which was impacting the run game, getting in the backfield, and putting down big hits. Right, Berry's a physical player as well, and he's kind of had that safety corner hybrid. McBurrows too. I mean, we've seen McBurrows has got hurt twice because of hitting players. So they've got physical dudes there. And Brandon Hillman getting some run there is interesting to me too, because, when Keon Sabb first left, he was a guy that I'm like, look, he can have a Sabb-like ascension in his sophomore year. They're similar players in terms of, again, that kind of safety hybrid. So him maybe finding a spot there. And again, what Wink does with the secondary and moving guys around, it'll be interesting for sure. But yeah, I don't want to freak out because when Mike Sainer still got moved over to play nickel to replace Daxton Hill, many people have commented on this. None of us thought he was going to be anything close to what he became.
Yeah.
Right. So obviously day one, it's a loss, but we'll, to your guys' credit, we'll see how these guys develop.
And I think it also speaks more to, if they're putting Hillman in a nickel type of role, it's like he's almost like you're too good to not play too, which kind of speaks to his kind of ability. So, we'll kind of see where it ends up.
And look, this safety room has been a roller coaster, the secondary included with that, because of the way the transfer portal has gone and injuries. Like, you feel really good at the end of camp until DJ Waller leaves. And then you add Hall and Johnson. And you're like, okay, safety room, Rod Moore and Makari Page come back. You're feeling pretty good. Moore's injured. Quentin Johnson's coming back. You're like, okay. But you lost Sab obviously earlier. And then you add Wesley Walker. Oh man, that's another tough one. I keep wanting to say Wesley Walker and Jaden Mangum, two guys who were very, very good. Tennessee was a better defense. Mangum was the best secondary player on a terrible defense at Michigan State. Look, the way I have this written right now is Johnson rotating with Page. I think at the start of the year, it's probably likely those are your two starters. Yeah. But more often than not, that was the piece was Johnson was rotating with Page, Sab was rotating with Moore. So the reason I kind of have it this way is I do think either Walker or Mangum, or both, frankly, they're probably both going to be able to play quite a bit. And again, it might be situational based on strength. But I think one of those guys is going to carve out a pretty heavy role. All four safeties played similar snaps last year. Some of that had to do with injuries, right? Moore was injured at the start of the year. Page had some injuries as well. But I think those four and Hillman, it sounds like in some capacity, are probably all going to play and rotate.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a common theme, especially on defense. It's like you lose one, you plug and play the other. Michigan does a really good job of reloading. It might not feel like reloading in certain positions, but by the way this thing kind of always seems to work itself out, you always kind of feel like they're reloading. So there's a lot to like with that safety room. Experience. I'm not counting out Jaden Mangum at all. I think they like him a lot. I think
Jesus Christ.
Yeah, I saw that. I got distracted.
Why is that not going away?
Hold on a second, folks. All right, there we go. Got it.
Man,
I got distracted by that. Absolute loser. But there's a lot to like with this safety group. I mean, experience is the most important part, I think, out of this group, because losing a guy like Rod Moore, prematurely, it was could have been considered devastating. At that point, yeah, it was devastating. And
we found out in the middle of a podcast, remember?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm absolutely not ruling out Jaden Mangum to be a significant factor for this group. And we're not even talking about the possibility of Rod Moore even coming back this year, because that door is wide open for his to return. And obviously that's going to be his decision. And by all means, it sounds like he doesn't want to be kept off the field if he doesn't want to be. So adding that as a depth piece down the line,
a November Rod Moore addition to that room. My God.
Yeah. One of a roster, a September roster call up in Rod Moore. I mean, adding that into the mix potentially down the line, gigantic. So you can rely on these younger guys to kind of eat up some time and wait for his return. But it would not be at all surprising to see a guy like Brandon Hillman or Jaden Mangum taking significant snaps this year and making the most of them too. So Yeah, I mean, obviously you'd like Rod Moore there. However, if you have Rod Moore, you might not have the depth that you have right now. So, it's obviously you don't want to wish injury on anyone and or anything like that. But, I guess if there was a good thing to come out of a really bad situation is now that Michigan has depth, because Mangum's going to be around for another year after this. So, all the experience and you can add Rod Moore for another year too. There's a red shirt option for him too. So now there's a lot more depth, a lot better depth, and even better guys coming in, in the recruiting world too. So, the defensive back depth is looking really, really good. And, if they can hit on some of these guys, it's going to be looking pretty good. Future's bright for sure.
Yeah, Trevor, you made a good point about Michigan starting the season with Makari Page and Quentin Johnson, then maybe going off of that once you get either Wesley Walker or Jaden Mangum ascending, but to start the season, if you start the season with Makari Page and Quentin Johnson, you're looking at a 5th-year senior and a 6th-year senior. And that's experience right there.
It's almost as good as when they had 7th-year senior Dax Hill. That's a deep cut for
Oh, that's funny. But
that podcast, so good. Anyway.
But yeah, I mean, that's experience. You got 2 guys there in Makari Page and Quentin Johnson that have played a ton. I mean, maybe not Johnson as much because it took him a while to consistently be on the field, but he made that play against Ohio State last year. He
did.
He clearly has shown that he can play. Makari Page has been a crucial piece of the defense the last couple of years. So you get those 2 guys in there and give them time for Jaden Mangum or Wesley Walker to get situated, you're going to be looking at a pretty solid safety room. So it'll be good to see. I wonder how long it'll take, or if it happens at all. Who knows how long Quentin Johnson can maintain that starting role. And obviously, like you guys mentioned, interested to see what Rod Moore does, what he decides to do in terms of getting healthy late in the year. Obviously, he doesn't want to jeopardize his potential career in the NFL. That would not be in his best interest. But if he can come back and be healthy and help the team going into a potential playoff run, that's going to be a tough decision for him.
Yeah, I mean, we've all said the same thing. Whatever he decides, cool.
Yeah.
He easily could have gone pro this year. He owes Michigan
done more than enough.
Yeah. So, it to me, it's just an incredible luxury that could potentially show up. I like this group a lot. I mean, Brock nailed it, but I like this group a lot with the experience. Well, it's funny because we talk about it's so much experience with Page and Johnson, but Walker has a ton of experience. Mangum has a decent amount. Like I say, he played 600 something snaps last year.
Yeah.
Right. Like even the younger guys have played a ton. This is a really good group. So I think they're going to rotate. And it might become situational. We'll have to see. I've said a bunch of times how much I love Makari Page's story from being thrown to the Wolves as a freshman in 2020 and really kind of breaking down and losing his role in 21 and then fighting back to eventually playing serious snaps. And he's been a starter ever since. And look, it doesn't mean it's a sure thing, but he was sent to Big Ten Media Days. So
yeah,
there's a good chance that Makari Page might be a captain on this team. And that's awesome.
Yeah.
Right. West Bloom boys. There you go. So we'll see. I like this group because it's not, my questions aren't about stepping up. It's purely like, how are you going to get all these guys on the field?
Yeah.
Walker and Mangum are too good, in my opinion, to not play. So how are you going to do it?
Yeah.
Right. This isn't like, well, we need to see from someone else. To Josh's point, Brandon Hillman might be getting looks at nickel because he's so good. They got to find a place for him to play.
Yep.
And if I would have told you that when Keon transferred, that's how we'd be talking about this safety group.
Yeah. Everything happens for a reason.
Yeah, it's wild. My friend from Iowa, Mr. Darbo, showing up late. I I can't remember how many days he has been alone, his wife gone, but I'd imagine the house, he's probably starting to burn furniture to keep heat.
Godspeed, sir.
Among other issues he's probably dealing with. But
answer Vince's question. I mean, we would like to. It's just kind of the planning and the setting up and kind of the just kind of negotiating everything coverage wise too. It just kind of makes it hard. I mean, we can try and maybe do something. I'm not sure. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I can't really give you a solid answer. It probably just sounds like I'm dancing around the question. But
we've done partnerships and stuff in the past, and it's tough to coordinate the prep beforehand, the entire event, and then literally having to go to work in the stadium, and then the coverage that comes after it. Yeah. I will say Brock and I, especially at road games or Big Ten championship games, things like that, we'll make appearances. So it's good to follow us on Twitter, and you can kind of figure out where we're at pregame. I definitely stop by and see some friends, and I can be found. Right. So they would, but Trevor can't get off his Circuit City weekend shifts.
Yep.
Brock probably doesn't know. We're on a crazy streak. I think that's got to be 8 or 9 episodes in a row with a Circuit City reference. So,
oh, yeah?
Yeah. Yep.
Wow.
It's been more organic than that, where like I'm just telling a story that happens to be Circuit City related, but it's...
Well, Steve's always good for one.
Steve's always going to throw one in
Circuit City reference a week.
Yeah.
Sorry, without Steve is responsible for keeping this streak going, and that's totally okay.
I keep forgetting to grab. So I thought my closet is very cartoon character in that it's like, I don't know why I have the same black polo 9 times. Right. So like black, black, blue, navy, gray, and then like a couple random colors throw it in, but I just have a bunch of the same shirts. So I've had all these black polos that I thought I had my Circuit City one, but I think it's at my mom's house. So I'll have to figure that out. But any in-game coverage like you tried last year in-game?
Yeah, the live thing that we tried to do.
Yeah. I like what we do post game personally.
Yeah. I think post game is a lot easier than mid game. I mean, a lot. If you're a subscriber, we're on the boards talking throughout the whole game, so it's not like we're not doing anything during the game. But
and I felt like to do the podcast between everybody having different delays and how they're viewing the game.
Yeah.
And then the delay in us presenting as well.
Yeah.
It's awkward. So the only other real solution was doing something like a Discord where we're showing the game while we watch it and people log in there, and you'd have to like provide your provider or whatever to be able to see the game.
Yeah, it's just way
but
too
I don't
I
don't know how many people are going to commit to watching the game that way versus on a TV or whatever it might be. So I think to Josh's point, we will definitely have pregame conversations, some sort of coverage. Maybe we do a pregame pod instead of in-game. I don't know. That's something we can talk about. We'll definitely have guys at the game. So you want to make sure, get this, Brock and Seth, you're following them on Twitter. And then, like Josh said, we start live threads pretty early before the games, and we're constantly posting throughout that and providing information, which gives me a nice little segue too. I haven't even mentioned it. I know it's been scrolling on the bottom, but today is the last day. Hold on, I got it somewhere. Where'd you go? Last day of our Blue 75 promo. Does that look good? That looks good. So promo code Blue 75, Michigan.rivals.com/sign up. You will get 75% off your entire first year subscribing to Maize and Blue Review. That gets you access to premium content, whether that's talking with recruits, recruiting pieces. I do my by the number pieces and what do I call it? Stock report. Weird. My stock reports, it's premium, and then a lot of our intel is obviously going to be premium on the message boards as well. And then our message board community, the Den, having access to there. And what we believe is the best message board community in the Michigan community. A lot of subscribers here in our chat every single week. You can ask them how they feel about the group that's over there. But now this is as good a time as any to join. You get 75% off your entire first year. Scrolling on the bottom there. Otherwise, you can go to either one of our Twitters. We have that information pegged on there as well. Pinned on there as well. We'll go with pinned. Let's see. Josh is an epic follow on X. Yeah.
I just don't deal with stupid very well.
I don't know how you. So my notifications at this point are so filtered. Like sometimes I'll go back to a post and I'm like, how many comments? And I scroll through and I'm just like, oh, they found it. It always takes like one Ohio State or one Michigan State person to like retweet it or something. And then they all come running. But it's hilarious to me because one, I don't get the notifications. I have no idea you're commenting on it. Two, you're just making me money. So
exactly. That's why that's a good like 75% of the reason why I do it because it helps the bottom line. And then the next 25 is like I just don't deal with stupid very well. So
I know Twitter's not real life.
I can talk to anyone about anything. But if you're just an absolute moron, I can't deal. I can't.
Yeah.
And that goes for anyone. I mean, I don't care if you're, an Ohio State fan, a Michigan State fan, or whatever. If you can't like come at me correct, then whatever. I'm actually not a road rage guy. Actually, I am not. Believe it or not, I'm not. I mean, I'll like.
What up, Toast?
I'll say some like, I'll call you some words to myself, but I'm not that type. I mean, the cars are a little too.
I am a former smoker. And when I quit smoking, I noticed one of the things I was really bad at was road raging while I'm driving. Because I used to basically chain smoke the entire time I was in the car. So, I mean, that was over a decade now. But when I quit smoking, dude, the expletives. But was I talking a lot of shit when I was driving, Brock? When we went to Nebraska? I don't really remember.
I don't remember you.
I don't remember being too bad.
I think you were pretty calm.
Our car was awesome though, because like the cruise control also like had sensors for all the cars around us.
Oh, that's the best. Yeah.
So like, because that's always like my biggest pet peeve is like, I want to get on the highway, set my cruise control, and you all do the same thing, and we can just shuffle and go.
Yeah.
And like when somebody's going 70 in the left lane and blocking you, and then they get in the right lane and go 80 and don't let you pass you, I want to Dale Earnhardt you off the road.
Yep.
Like Robbins racing, boom, see you later. You are a terrible human being. So my kid definitely has some vocabulary from me trying. I think he gets, are you kidding me? That one's a go-to all the time. So, but Camel Lights, not a Marlboro, man. Camel Lights.
Yuck.
I know. Get that Irish temper going. I have a very Irish name, but I'm actually not that Irish. It's kind of funny. Like, yeah. I think once I'm like, 100% Camel guy in the sleeve too, right?
Yeah. So that.
Yeah. Anyway, let's talk about smoking for a while.
Yeah.
So,
monetized on YouTube.
Would it?
I wouldn't be surprised.
Interesting. And it comes full circle. No, we weren't allowed to smoke in the store. Oh, that's a lie. One of my favorite things about Circuit City was we would get all the video games, movies, CDs, whatever it was, like a week before they were released. And this was back when you didn't have to download a lot of content on games. You could just put the game in and play it. So like whenever a Halo or a Call of Duty or a Madden or whatever came out after the store closed, like a week before the game came out, we'd set up a bunch of consoles on the TV wall and just sit in the store and drink and smoke and play video games all night. Drinking energy drinks or whatever. Oh, those were the days.
That's funny.
Wow.
Oh, we haven't even talked about special teams.
Ugh. All right. I have a spot for it.
The only thing that we talk about is Dominic Zavada is going to be the kicker.
Yeah, he's going to be the kicker. Tommy Doman, I think, is a better punter than people realize.
Yeah.
So he's a really good punter. Do we have anything on return? Is it going to be Samaj or Tyler? Are they going to find one of their not top two wide receivers to do it?
JB Brown met with the media this week, and he really kind of just mentioned that, yeah, I mean, Tyler and Samaj were the two main guys he mentioned, but he also said that there's other guys in the mix too. So we'll kind of see. I mean, it's probably going to be
Alex Orji.
Yeah.
He's going to return the kickoff and then just stay on the field and play quarterback.
Yeah, right.
It's probably just Samaj, and it's going to be a combination of Samaj and Tyler Morris. I know you mentioned Will Johnson too, but I don't know how how involved he's going to be in that, but I don't know. I'm excited about Zavada. I think Michigan's got a really damn good kicker.
Yeah.
They mentioned JB Brown mentioned that he's 6-7 from 50 plus during camp, which is really good, really, really good numbers.
Look, we've seen Jake Moody win games. Michigan doesn't beat Ohio State without Turner.
Yep.
It's
important. It matters.
There will be a game or two where you need those kicks to be made.
Illinois,
it absolutely matters.
I know. I've seen people talk about this because obviously the Woodson comparisons. Do you let Will Johnson get in on the return game? It's like
I wouldn't.
I wouldn't either.
You don't need him
either. I mean, frankly, I think we know Samaj. We've seen already. He ran out of gas against Iowa, but we know what he can do in the return game. I know people are going to be anxious because of the Ronnie Bell injury, which to that point, look, Marion Stewart might be the fastest dude on the team. If he can do the returns, then great. But we've also seen that anxiety when somebody's back there and can't really line up to catch it. We saw Morgan get a muff punt in the Rose Bowl too, right? So whoever catches it, not only most consistently, but with the least amount of anxiety, right? Jake Thaw, Rose Bowl. My God, starting to get creepy flashbacks here. Yeah. Like I said, I brought up Cole earlier too. Like somebody like that, if they can do it without much drop off,
it's one of those things where it's like it's not a plug and play position. No matter how much you think it is, it's not. And as you just mentioned, Jake Thaw, it's not easy to do. And they didn't trust anyone enough to give them a chance outside of Jake Thaw, and he could have risked the Rose Bowl and saved the Rose Bowl in the same play. So it's not easy to do. I mean, you can't just pick a guy down from your roster and say, hey, go return kicks. It's not that easy. So you want a guy you can trust back there. And
Pepper's returning kicks was so fun.
Yeah. I mean, the return part is fine. It's getting the balls is the most important part. I mean, it's like that is like 95% of the whole operation is identifying the ball and securing it and then taking off. Like that, whatever happens after that is
and with the kickoff rule changes and the specialty kicks on punts and stuff, you really don't get that many returns anymore.
Not really.
So to your point, just catch it.
Yeah, just secure it. Just get a guy that can secure it.
All right. So we're about halfway through fall camp. Next week is moving week, if you will. I think a lot of things are going to be figured out next week, and then we're getting dangerously close to game week and getting into the flow of regular football coverage. It is exciting. Again, we're going to try and do this every week, live at 7, Hail to the Podcast on Sundays. We've also got Dennis's shows we'll pick up during the season as well. He's live during the day. And then the content will obviously kick up once we have some games and stuff as well. So make sure you're liking and subscribing, notification bell here, and then heading over to michigan.rivals.com. Join our community. I always tell you 60 to 70% of what we talked about on the show today has already been happening on the message boards the last few days. So you can be a part of the conversation 24/7, 365.
I can't confirm that Circuit City Talk is exclusive to this podcast, and it's not.
Yeah, that doesn't make its way to the board.
So you all podcast people get a little special nugget in that regard.
I don't know where it went. Somebody said something about me closing down Circuit City and like taking all the clearance stuff. That's a fact. Because I hadn't worked there as long as the other managers, so they all got like really fat severance checks to leave. So I was the highest ranking manager left and in charge of the entire liquidation and everything. So I definitely sold some stuff to myself for $1. But
yeah, whatever.
I got screwed by them in the end of the day anyway. So whatever. Like 10 years ago? No, it was longer than that. It was like 07. I old. Brock, how old were you in 2007?
4 or 5.
Oh my goodness.
4 for most of the year.
Dude, I almost threw up.
Yeah.
I thought he was gonna say 6 or 7, but yeah, you just turned 21 not that long ago. That's right.
Yeah.
I would have not been surprised if like I wasn't even born yet. I mean, obviously not, but like I would have not been shocked.
Just to mess with me, that would have been amazing.
I wasn't even born in 07.
Yeah.
Oh
my God, Steve. Yes, that's what happened. Like, so when they go bankrupt, they have this list of debtors that they owe money to, right? So the deal was, hey, you sell 10 grand worth of stuff, you get 1%, 20 grand, you get 2, whatever. So the more stuff I sold, the higher percentage I got from that liquidation sale. That was the deal. Literally everything, the desk chairs, the fixtures, the peg, I mean, you name it, literally everything. It gets done. I'm owed like $4,500. Instead of it just being on my regular paycheck, it gets added to the list of people Circuit City owes money to. Well, by the time they were done paying Samsung, HP, whoever, there was no money left for me. So I got screwed working my butt off on that liquidation. Bad memory, Steve. Thank you. Oh, that ticked me off. Well, and then like some people that were high up executives ended up buying the logo on the website and just like relaunching it after the fact as like an online only business.
Yeah.
I think it's still up.
Yeah, they sell just crap.
Good check. Yeah, look at this.
Yeah.
Ah.
It still exists, but it's like it's obviously very fake.
Look at that. Circuit City.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, this is way. Oh yeah, this is okay. There's not even anything loading. Okay, for a while there, it was more legit, like a new egg or something like that kind of deal. But anyway, so all right, that's it.
Yep, that's how we end it. See ya.
Yeah, but no, Brock, good to have you back, buddy. Absolutely,
good to be here. Good to be back.
All right, guys, we'll have more talk next week, live Sunday at 7. If you are looking for Harbaugh,
we didn't talk about it
because we're not going to. Oh, good.
Justin Fields' sister committed to Michigan, Michigan women's basketball. I forgot. Yeah, I totally skipped my mind because we were talking football. I forgot. Yes.
And
Michigan basketball or women's basketball is on a roll right now. That's 2 really good commits in a matter of days.
Yep. Mackenzie Matherin.
Yep. I couldn't think of the name. I was never going to think of the name, but
yep.
Hockey's killing it too, man.
Yeah, hockey's figuring it out.
Holy cow.
3 of the top 6 recruits in 2008 born skaters are committed to Michigan.
Yep.
So
number 1 North American.
Yeah, they're going to be elite for years to come for sure. Brandon Arado he's got to figure it out for sure.
Yeah.
I'm convinced if Augustine had stayed, Michigan's winning the Big Ten championship. Michigan's winning even maybe the Natty last year instead of Michigan State winning the Big Ten. He was such a difference maker.
Yeah, I agree.
And I hope the Red Wings call him up, not only because that would hurt Michigan State, but oh my God. I know they have like 6 goalies now. You're going to have to like piece them together and get one good one, but that'd be sweet. So,
yeah. Absolutely.
Anyway, what was I saying? Oh, yeah. If you want Harbaugh NCAA talk, we have it on the message boards, or any Ohio State, Michigan State podcast. We'll be talking about it, so you can head over there. We wanted to talk football today. So.
Yeah, this is a football-only pod today. We've heard enough, done enough about the middle fingers of the NCAA and all that stuff.
Just beating the same drum. And look, Jim Harbaugh could not care less. Michigan could not care less. Jim Harbaugh will be the honorary captain week 1 against Fresno State. Yep. Love it. I love it so much. But anyway, all right, guys. That's the podcast. Live Sundays. Like, subscribe, notification bell, Michigan.rivals.com. If you're not a subscriber already, you've got, 3 hours, Blue 75% off promo. Do it. We'll see you next week.